We are the Wachters, Ben and Maria Wachter, and we just want to briefly share with you guys what we'll be talking about today. So it's very small, I apologize, but we'll just say, who are we, where are we going to be serving, how you can be praying for us, what we hope to accomplish there, and then as well, how to remain in touch with us, all right? I'm going to just briefly introduce myself. I'm from the west side of Indianapolis. I actually go to the church called Parkside, as Matt shared at the beginning of the service there. They are our sending church. I grew up in that church. That church is associated with a school, and that school is actually where I came to saving faith at a young age. And I would say that conversion was genuine, but we saw that bear fruit, and I saw that as God continued to work and teach me the truths of His grace and His Word as I continued to get older and on into high school. My family, growing up, they were a Christian home. And in fact, my parents, when my dad reached retirement just a couple of years ago, they ended up selling their house and moving down to the country of Brazil in order to be missionaries down there. That was not something that they had done or had on their radar, but they were considering, Lord, how do we steward our retirement well? And they sought advice in a missionary to Brazil. And I said, that was your first mistake. You don't want to talk to a missionary about advice, what to do with your life. They're going to call you on the field. And that's what happened with them. So that's where they are now. And so that's where my parents are at. I have a brother who is an engineer out in Seattle, and my sister, both of them younger, is going to be moving up to Vancouver, and she will be studying linguistics at a school up there. She hopes to use that for Bible translation. After graduating from high school, I went to this university called Cedarville over in Ohio, and I did not think that I would be doing ministry or doing missions with my life. That was not on the radar whatsoever. I thought that I would do research or become a doctor or something related with the medical field, and so that was kind of the route that I felt like the Lord had just established for me. And oh, did the Lord have different plans for my life. He, just through a variety of circumstances at the end of my senior year, just used those circumstances to begin to help me recognize that all of my life is now dedicated and been called to be used by God. And so He used some very particularly painful circumstances. I had been seeing and dating a girl for almost 2.5 to 3 years, and we were very serious, and we were looking at rings and had been looking at dates. But the Lord, through the divorce of her own parents, kind of spiraled into our own relationship, and that was what kind of broke us up. So that senior year, when I graduated, I went to a bunch of different weddings, and there was a growing level of discontentment in my heart over, Lord, why do you have me here? What are you doing in my life? And so to kind of sort all of that out, I did a very drastic thing. I decided I'm just going to get away. I'm going to take a year off before I go on to graduate school. And the place that I went was over to China. You think that's really drastic? Okay, it was. Just wanted to get away. And so for those of you who know a little bit, my aunt had taught English in China, and she had recommended that that would be a good opportunity for me to teach English to. So I moved to China, and then I spent a year and a half over there. And while I was there, the Lord really began teaching me to have a heart for discipleship. And He did that by plugging me into an underground church and an underground school that was over there. And while I was there, I began to feel that perhaps the Lord is calling me into ministry. And I had a conversation with my pastor, who was back at Parkside, and told him what the Lord was doing in me. And he said, Ben, I think that you really need to come home. You need to come home so that we can assess what's going on and maybe talk about what the future plans will be. It was very good advice. So I came home, and the Lord used my local church to really teach me what it meant in order to be sent well on mission and ministry. And they invited me to do an internship there, And the culmination of that internship resulted in a 2-year pastoral residency over in Germany. And it was in Germany, about a year and a half into that residency, that I met Maria. Maria's going to tell you now a little bit about her story.
So I come from Ukraine. I was born and raised in Ukraine, and I was born to a Catholic family, and we went to Catholic church when I was young, and I wouldn't say we were very strong believers. We would go for holidays, but not, and we would follow those rules that are to follow, but I wouldn't say that it affected our heart very much. So when I was 13, my dad was invited by his coworker to come to a service of a new Baptist church that was opening in our town. And he, at that point, was already looking for something different because he knew that how we were living and what we were doing wasn't right, but he didn't know what was. So when we came and heard the gospel and met the people who lived their lives for God, we knew that that was the place to stay for us. So I got included in all sorts of ministries and summer camps, and that's when I accepted Christ during summer camp, and that ministry was very deep in my heart because that's how that's when I made a decision to follow Christ, and I wanted to continue doing that for others to do the same. So I would participate in summer camps where I lived, and then after school I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I didn't want my parents to pay for something that I may not even use in my life, so I just started working, and then my dad gave me very good advice, and he said, if you want to serve God, you need to do it well, so you need to study that. So I went to seminary, and that's the degree that I got, and that's where I met all the wonderful people and different missionaries, and that's where I realized that I thought I was living my life for God, but it wasn't to the extent that the Bible talks about. That I thought I was doing enough, but He doesn't want just enough. He wants all of it. So I met some missionaries from Germany that invited me to serve in summer camp in Germany. So a couple years I would go every summer and serve in summer camp. And the first year I went, I had English in school, but I could maybe introduce myself, and that was about it. And I knew zero German. So at that time, I thought, how am I going to talk to those people? And they said, oh, there's someone who knows Russian. You know Russian too, and they can translate, and you'll be fine. So I went, and I could barely communicate to the people that I was serving with, and I just felt very sorry that I couldn't talk to those people. So I decided I'm going to go home and learn English and come back next year and be able to talk to them. So for the first half a year, I was texting with the people that I met at the summer camp, and I had to use translator for every single message that I would write to them or they would write to me. But eventually I could use some words and learn more, and I would practice that summer in Germany, and it would get better every year. And then I was done with seminary, and I was working at the seminary as well at that time, and I just felt like God wanted me to trust Him more. So I didn't know exactly what He wanted from me or what plan He had in my life, but I just felt like He wants me to leave everything I'm doing and do something that is only for Him. So I quit my job, and I went on a trip to Germany to look for a place to do a long-term internship. And the first place I went to was the place where Ben was already serving at that time. So that's when we met.
Yep. And so if in ministry, you basically just get thrown in together very quickly. And so in like 2 weeks of meeting, of having breakfast and lunch and dinner and after dinner and all of the other things that fill up the day, Maria and I were already at that time very interested in one another. And so we were actually 2 weeks into just knowing each other and also, seeing, Lord, is this something that perhaps is that you're bringing each other into each other's lives? Is this something that you're bringing about? And we were having a conversation with one of her friends on the phone, and her friend just so happened to be an immigration lawyer, and which was very helpful to us because she could see all the warning flags that were flying, because I was towards the end of my time. I said I had made a 2-year commitment, and this was about a year and a half in, and so I would be coming back here to the States. So what did that mean if Maria and I were thinking about perhaps entering into a relationship with the hope of heading towards marriage? What would that mean? And so initially she said, well, you could seek to bring Maria over to the States, and then maybe you guys could get married over there. And she said, but that process can take a year and a half. And I was like, that sounds like a long time to be apart in 2 different countries, and that's not something that I'm necessarily interested in doing and trying to juggle that type of long-distance relationship. And so we both were like, okay, well, what are our other options? And she said, well, you could get married as soon as possible. I was like, oh, okay. That's a fun way to end a phone call. Sitting next to someone that you've only met 2 weeks ago, and you're getting a pretty good sense of who they are because you've seen them on mission, you see how they handle God's word, and you see how they minister to other people. But that's a pretty hard conversation. That's a hard turn to make.
But we were kind of older. I was 25, he was 27 at that point, and we both had decided by then that we just want to serve God and wait when He will, if He will, send us someone that we can do it with.
Yeah.
So that's the mindset that we came to that meeting with.
So after that phone call ended, we both were sitting on the couch next to each other, kind of like giving each other the side eye. Until I was like, okay, I'm the man. I should probably, take initiative here. And I just said, so we're getting married? And I looked at her to see her response, because if it was a bad response, probably doesn't indicate anything good. And she said,
and I said, well, I guess we are. So that's how we decided.
That wasn't the proposal, okay? We still, did it all right. But 5 months after meeting each other, we ended up getting married over there in Germany. And so during that time, we, of course, met with a lot of people, and we talked about and did a lot of, we did premarital counseling that really helped us kind of pull all of those expectations and those levels of cultural differences that exist between 2 different people, and that was hugely helpful. In particular, one couple, which may have not been super helpful, but they just said they had been married for almost 55 years, and we were talking with them, and they were like, well, how long is it between you guys getting to know each other and you getting married? And we're like, well, it's going to be about 5 months. And they were like, oh, we got married in 3. You guys are fine. So that's helpful and unhelpful. And they've been married for 55 years and been on the mission field for much of that. So that was of great encouragement to us to just recognize that, marriage is a covenant. That's what you're entering into. And recognizing that each of us are beholden to God's word in order to speak into each other's lives in that way is really, really helpful.
And we could see how God just brought us together, because how otherwise we would meet coming from 2 different countries in Germany, doing the same ministry, having the same thoughts and desires to do ministry, and just how He was working through all the difficulties that we had to go through, just how fast the process was and everything. And we say we started dating after we got married because we didn't get the chance before.
We do, yep. And so God's been very faithful to us. We have been married for 5 years, and we have 2 kids and 1 more on the way in September. So we're celebrating that. And so we actually got married in Germany. We were there and stayed there for about 10 more months after that, so extended our stay. And we moved back here just before everything went crazy with COVID. So that was an interesting time to experience, but grateful that we could experience it here in America rather than in Germany, because Germany was much more locked down than it was here. Just a brief couple of pictures. This is my family, the rest of us, and then here are the rest of Maria's family. Maria, do you want to speak just in terms of how your family's doing?
Yeah, so my mom and my two brothers are in Ukraine right now. They live in a pretty safe area. It's only 2 hours away from Polish border, so they are far west, and they still have all the social disruptions and sometimes electricity problems and phone connection and things like that, but we are still able to stay in contact with them and frequently talk. My sister is doing, she's studying German, and she's actually at the church that we used to be, and she's hoping to finish her degree in Germany and stay there for a little bit. I don't think she wants to live there forever, but for right now, she finds it a good place to be. And my dad is currently living with us. He was in Europe at the time that the war started, and then the company that he worked for stopped paying him, and his living situation just wasn't that great, but he was the only one supporting the family. So we were hoping we could bring him here and help him to continue support them, maybe find a job here. So we're still in the process with that.
All right, and then here is just a picture of both families being combined 5 years ago in Germany. So, who are we? What are we interested in doing? This is a quote that I just pulled from J.D. Greear in his book, Gaining by Losing. And he just says, motivation for mission grows out of a deep personal experience with the gospel. When we are amazed at the grace God showed in saving us, going to great lengths to save others seems an insignificant thing. So this is really impactful for us. There's a good analogy for this. I appreciated it, that essentially the gospel is kind of like a trampoline. The deeper that you jump into the trampoline, the higher that you're going to be propelled onto mission. And in many ways, we're compelled in order to do ministry because we have had this personal experience with the gospel, right? So that is our motivation for wanting to do missions. We also, of course, our motivation in having this experience of the gospel, we want to have the gospel be clarified, right? One particular aspect that we can see in Germany is that the gospel has really been distorted. It has been really kind of been lost in the own sphere that's there. People go after other gospels. People believe their own levels of prosperity gospel. And so a heart behind our motivation is we just want people to believe the gospel as it is presented in scriptures, right? And then as well, in particular, Matt kind of highlighted this a little bit in the beginning. We think that the best environment that people can grow and be involved in is within a local church. So we, in particular, are targeting and going after a local church environment because that's where disciples are called to be a part of and called to grow, right? And so that is our specific ministry focus. So what that means is we're being sent by a local church, and the target that we're going to is a local church that has called and asked if we would be willing in order to come and to minister in amongst that church. We'll get to that in a little bit more, but that is our motivation, is that it's driven by the fact that we believe that God works through his kingdom that is made manifest through his local church. So you might be asking, okay, where are you going in Germany? Just threw up a map up on the screen. If you're familiar at all with Germany, we kind of are sitting in Western Germany, actually surrounded by France. France is to our south, France is to our west, and then right above us is that city that you can see, Kuhn. That is Cologne, as you guys might know, and then we're just about 2 hours south west of Frankfurt. If any of you have been in the military or in the Air Force, in the region that we're in, there's quite a few military bases that are there. Ramstein Air Force Base, which is the largest Air Force base outside of the U.S., is located within that same region that we're in. So if you know any members who may have been deployed to Germany, they could be very close to the same region that we will be ministering in. The town in specific that we're going to is called St. Wendel, which I was told there's actually a St. Wendel in Indiana, which I did not know about, but in southern Indiana. You may be asking yourself, why Germany? And so as we get into this section, feel free if you have a question or if you are interested in learning more about something, feel free to just pop your hand up and feel free to ask any questions throughout this entire presentation. This could be a to and fro, right? You may ask, okay, why Germany, right? Isn't that the place where the Reformation happened? So to do that, we kind of have to understand a little bit of what actually occurred during the Reformation. In 1517, Luther, he recovered the doctrine of grace. We know this, right? This is something that in particular, he wanted to see the Roman Catholic Church begin to understand that we are saved only through grace, not through the works. And so, of course, he began the act of what he wanted to do, which is bring about these levels of change within the Roman Catholic Church itself. Luther didn't distance himself from the Roman Catholic Church initially. He wanted to bring about reformation within. When it became apparent that he wasn't able to do that, that is when you begin to see the separation that occurred in the Protestant movement that we call the Reformation. But what really began to happen in Germany was that you began to have people who would side with Luther and his Protestant kind of Reformation that was going on there, and then you would begin to have people who would side with the papacy and the Pope and the Roman Catholic Church. And so as such, you began to have ensuing wars that were really fought between two opposing views of Christianity, right? There was a 30-year war, in fact, that was fought directly after the Reformation, in which two sides of Christians really were attacking one another, right? And the way that kind of, in particular, began to look is certain states and certain cities in Germany would align themselves with either Lutheranism or Catholicism, right? And that still holds true to this day. In the German state, there is no real separation between the church and the state. In fact, if you're a German, you could give a portion of your paycheck through taxes to a church. You could just line item that and you could give to the church in that way. And the government will be responsible for taking that money and giving it to that church. So there wasn't a real separation of church and state. And that amount of infighting that occurred between there really was not a great witness to the testimony of God's grace. And then anyone who didn't believe in Catholicism or Lutheranism, like Baptists or Mennonites or any of these other people, then they really had no place to be. And that's why you see a lot of those people who really left Germany after that point, and they spread all throughout the world. In particular, some in southern Indiana and northern Indiana and Pennsylvania with the Pennsylvania Dutch, who are actually German, but they speak, we call them the Pennsylvania Dutch, right? And so you began to see people leave because of religious persecution. And so that was really what was going on in Germany. And so now modern Germany, we find that only 2% of the population is what we would call evangelical believing Christian, okay? That is an extremely small number. This is not a number that is including, this number is including all of what we would call Protestant levels of faith. Okay, so this is not, Bethel would be included into that number, Parkside would be included into that number, but likewise included in that number, we would have all of our Presbyterian brothers, we would have all of our charismatic brothers that would be lumped into this number, and so in each one of those, we would say there's some level of gospel that is not correct, right? And so even though we say that there's 2%, the number of really people who hold to the gospel that we would say what we believe in is far lower than that. Yes?
Do you know how many Catholics?
So the total number who would identify as being Christian in Germany is upwards in the 60%. And so as a result of that, you really begin to have people who say, I'm Catholic, but they have not been to church for many years. And they may even say, okay, I've given all of my taxes, I've given all of my money to the Catholic Church. But it's really, that does not mean that they're actually Christians.
That's
Maria is
also
one.
a
Yeah.
big thing because that makes many people believe that if they pay taxes to the government for church, that they did their part. So that's their salvation. Like, I've paid to church, for church or to church all my life, and I've given God the part that He wanted me to. So I've supported church all my life, so I should be saved. So a lot of them just have no idea that they are not.
Yeah. And it just means that you just have a level of cultural Christianity, which just means people assume that they got all their bases covered, or they just assume that they're Christian. But what that really just means is that they really have no understanding of the gospel, right? And so that makes it particularly hard in order to try to share the gospel with those people, because they think that they're good, right? And they're pragmatic about their own beliefs. So you have to try to really understand and try to enter in and try to build a relationship with them so that you may share the truth of God's word with them. There's a couple of other cultural barriers that are there. The first one is kind of just referred to as post-Christendom. And so just very quickly, what I mean by that is that Christianity has really exited the public square in Germany. And if you go there and you go there as a tourist, what you might find is that more people are in churches throughout the week as tourists than are there on Sunday morning, right? And so if you maybe ask someone, could you tell me who Jesus was? They would maybe give a semblance of an answer. If you polled someone here, you may get the full gospel story or some aspect of that. In Germany, you wouldn't get likely any of that, right? And so the message of the gospel is becoming increasingly lost. Another thing is that Germans are inherently very skeptical about the church in Germany because they think that you're coming after their money. And especially is if you're not a member of the state church, so the Lutheran church or the Catholic church. So they view all other churches which are not sanctioned by the official state. Germans love things that are rubber stamped, okay? If you're not rubber stamped and you're not, in connection with the state, then you're a cult. And so that's another barrier that Germans have. And you got to, like I said, you just need to be there and active in the community and make yourself available for them so that they don't think that you're a weirdo, that you're not a member of the cult. So that's one of the initial barriers.
That's one of the aspects of speaking to Germans, that you almost have to first let them see your life, and it takes a long time, and it takes a long time to enter into their privacy, because they are very private about all of their things, and they separate the way they live their life and the work. It does not get combined with their home life or neighbors, and it's all little cupboards that they have in their life, and they only are in that cupboard when they interact with their coworkers, and they don't get mixed up with some of other areas of their life. But that's how it takes a very long time to actually just live your life and be an example in that way, until they are even allowing you to speak to their life.
Are there any questions about Germany and anything related to what we just said? Yes.
Marie, do you think that having been Catholic, you will be able to speak to them and be more received?
Maybe, but in Ukraine, the situation is and I don't know exactly if Germany has that kind of thinking, but if you are leaving your faith, so all the Catholics would consider you
To be excommunicated.
yes, you left the faith of your family. So that is maybe harder to speak to sometimes, but also if you can relate to some things, like when they open up and share about their thoughts and feelings, then you can relate to that and say, I went through that as well. And then I think that in that area, it would be helpful. But I think there's another step. They have to accept that it's okay that you left.
Yeah, that's good. Right. So how can you be praying for Germany? Feel free, take out your phone, take a picture of this slide, or I can give it to you later. But just be praying for gospel fruitfulness, right? That people are bold in their proclamation of the gospel. Just be praying that there are new pastors and leaders who will be raised up there. There is a huge need of biblically qualified pastors and leaders there in Germany. There are many churches who would love to have a pastor who do not have anyone who is willing to step into that role. As well, just be praying for the churches as they wrestle with the role of women. In particular, this is a very hot topic in Germany. What role can women play in a church? In particular, in the office of a pastor. Many of the churches in Germany have gone the route of that women can serve in the role as a pastor, and that is really divisive in the church right now over there. As well, one thing that we just weren't able to speak to that is a huge thing that's going on in Germany is the refugee crisis. There are many, many people who are there who are from nations that you have almost little to no access from. So it is a blessing that you can speak and have access to these people who would have otherwise no access to the gospel. But they also bring with them certain cultural challenges that could also be another form of divisiveness within the church. So that's how you can be praying for Germany. Now let us speak just very quickly to where specifically we will be going. We're going to be going to the town of St. Wendel. It is a town of only about 25,000 residents, in primarily a Catholic town. And so on the other side of the Reformation, they had aligned themselves with the Catholic Church. And specifically, we're going to the church called City Church that is over there. City Church was founded in 2013. They got about 30 members currently. They have one lay elder who's currently there. His name is Samuel. You can see a picture of him and his family up there on the screen. And it is the only evangelical church in that city. Right? So 25,000 people, one church, 35 members. And so that's why that passage that I preached from today is such a comfort to me, because we know that if there's a gospel witness in this city, that the Lord has us there for a reason. And the Lord has people in that city who are to come to know him, right? So that's who we'll be going to. Like we had said, the local church is our focus in ministry. And so to be invited by them is a huge honor. And what we hope to do is we hope to work within that church. We seek to encourage them, and we seek to help them along in order that they may reach their community. And we ultimately hope to work ourselves out of a job. We want this to be a uniquely German church. We don't want to be Americans who come in, or Ukrainians, to come in and to tell them, hey, this is how you do church. No, we want to partner with them. And we ultimately want to see that church be established under German eldership. And so part of that's going to be a large portion of our work that we have cut out for us. Who are our partners? Our sending church is Parkside Bible. Our mission board or mission agency here in the States is called Servant Leaders. They are a very small mission agency, only about 25 of us. Primarily, they were in Latin America, and now they've recently started to have a presence in Europe. And they are all about equipping local churches, sending people to other local churches. So they fit in direct line with who we are and what we're all about. And then we also have a German agency that's just called Missionsdienst, and they're just are there to help facilitate our on-the-ground levels of support and help facilitate our visas. And then very quickly, what do we hope to accomplish there? We just hope to be an encouragement to the church that is there. They have not been with a full-time pastor for almost 3 years now. And so as such, the church is running well. There's a group of believers that are there, but they are just needing someone to come alongside them and shepherd their souls. And so that's primarily what we anticipate doing for this initial amount of time that we're there. We hope to shepherd well. We hope to look after them and pour God's word into their hearts. And so that's what our primary goal in going is to be. We also hope to see, like I said, Germans be equipped in their own respective areas of ministry. We want to see German elders be raised up out of that church so that they would be able to lead in that church well. And we also just want to see a level of both men and women be equipped in each of their realms and respective spheres of ministry so that they'll be able to do those well. So there's an aspect of training to what we hope to accomplish there. And then last, we just hope to engage and push the church to engage with their own community. Right now, since they've been without a pastor, they're really kind of turned inward a little bit, and they're thinking about, okay, how can we just survive? How can we get to the next month and the next month and the next month? But as we begin to have a presence there and begin to encourage them and help them see that the gospel is really a message of proclamation. And that proclamation is what needs to go out into their community and into that area. And so what we ultimately want to see there is that the Lord does a work within that church of revitalization and of revival, and that more Germans in that city will come to know them, with an end result of being able to hand that church back over to the Germans, them able to run with it, and then that church in turn goes about perhaps planting another church in a surrounding city or even in the same city. There's more than enough people within that city who need to come to know Christ. And so what we hope to see is that that church is strengthened but also becomes a multiplying church. So you might ask, okay, how can we be praying for you? We hope to reach full support by winter of this winter. We are currently over 80% supported. And so we're just praying that the final amount will come in before Maria gives birth in September. And then we'll be able to, so we're not needing to go around on the road. And then we hope to get over there early next year, within the first 2 weeks, likely in January. Just pray for us during this time. We are continuing to serve at our local church. And just pray that this will be a fruitful time of us as we just prepare and equip ourselves to be heading out. And then as well, we have some pending upcoming trips to additional churches. And so just be praying that they will be going well as well. And then Silas and Svinka, those are our two kids, that they will just continue to grow in the knowledge of the Lord. And that City Church continues to be encouraged and strengthened. How you could stay in touch with us. So at the back, and I think you had a stack as well, Matt. Yeah. Have our prayer card. Put this somewhere visible so that you guys are just reminded to pray for us. We got our names here at the bottom. Just please be praying for us. I try to send regular updates through a prayer letter that goes to your email. And you can find that at either the website that's listed there, or if you use your phone and use your QR code, that will also direct you to the website, okay? So I would really encourage you guys, and we would be greatly encouraged if you would sign up, and we know that you would be praying for us. Are there any additional questions that you guys may have? I know that we ran through that pretty quickly. There's a lot there. I see a couple hands. Yes? German. It's only German. Yep.
And he does speak German. He's completely fluent. He's preached in German before, so that is covered. I still will need to learn because I was learning English at that time.
Yeah, and that goes back to, we want to make sure that it's the German church and not, necessarily, because you could mix it and you would, have a unique church in which you're multinational trying to reach. But we're there trying to reach Germans in particular. And so that's a particular thing that we want to concentrate on, is reaching them in their own language as well. But that's a really good question. Yeah. I saw another one. Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask, do you speak German?
Yeah, yeah. So I was greatly blessed by the internship that I did there. The whole first year that I did the internship on was primarily concentrated on learning German. So that was really of great benefit. They said, this is your main ministry. Think of it as a ministry, is you to learn German so that your second year would be fruitful in that way. And I'm really grateful for them because I know in my own heart I probably wouldn't have paid that much attention, but they're absolutely right. It really pays off later. So I'm grateful for that. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes. Yes. So some of servant leaders, they are really good at helping to equip, and they have a lot of resources that we're able to use to train pastors. And so those would need to be translated from English over to German, but those would be able to be utilized as well. The organization called 9 Marks, which is all about equipping pastors to pastor well, they have a lot of books that are available in German as well. And so one aspect of being able to train really well is to have them be reading these type of books and then just being able to discuss them. So those are some like readily available resources that would be very fruitful for the training up of new pastors. Yeah.
And I was going to say that Ben also has been part of pastors group at our church and have been able to watch them work this entire year since we started support raising, and he's able to go to all the meetings that they do and see how they approach deciding and dealing with problems, and that's how he's been taught this whole year how to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Good question. Any else? If you got one, feel free, come up to us afterwards, and we would really appreciate getting to know you and hearing anything that you might have to say.